Are you doing a live video?
Yeah, it's working.
Oh.
Hello. All right. Hello to who is watching right now. This is the first one that I'm doing live. As you can see, it's for fly tying. I'm gonna record these, and I plan on doing. I plan on doing more videos. Once I get a little bit more comfortable doing this. This is super new to me, and you know that, well, any of you guys that know me knows that I pretty much suck at technology. So I'm going to link this to Fisher Flyworks, which is my company that I tie flies and sell them all across the country. And thank you for everyone that's joining. Hi, Amber. Hi, Kristen. Hi, Maria. Good to see you guys. To start off, I wanted to kind of wanted to start off from the get-go, from the beginning. How do you get into this stuff? So the theme for this is part one. The most basic technique is thread control, which I find is the first thing that people really need to gain control of before they actually start to do any really successful tying. Because if you can't control your thread, you can't control anything. So I'm going to go through. I'm not going to get super heavily into tools too long, because I want to kind of get to the point of it, which is the thread. But to start it off, basic tools that you really are looking for: really good scissors. Scissors is another big thing. If you don't have good scissors, if they don't cut well, it's just going to add more problems later. So you want to make sure that they're sharp. One of the big things that I look for in really good scissors is a really sharp point. And that's so that I could get into really small areas to clip off whatever materials they may be, a pheasant tail or... I mean, this is some surgical shit that you're doing when it comes to some of the size of these flies. Some of them are pretty small. So you're going to need, scissors that are really meant for thread. Try not to use it for much more than just thread, because you will dull them quicker. So if you're cutting something heavy like deer hair, or any sort of fur or feather that's coarse, you're going to use another set of scissors that's not as probably expensive, and not really ones that you value as much. So scissors, good ones, invest in them. They're super important. That's one of your big things is your main pair of scissors. The second pair of scissors, I usually have my first pair of scissors that have become my crap scissors. They don't suck. They're Dr. Slick. Dr. Slick makes a lot of tools for the industry for fly tying. They're a reliable brand, and I like them a lot. They're not expensive. They do the job. They don't last as long in terms of sharpness, but then again, I also beat the shit out of these things, so maybe it's me. So I use them now to just cut whatever the hell I want. I cut wire with these things. I really don't give a shit. I've went through a billion different pairs. Some tires, commercial tires, like to tie in hand, so they'll loop it around their finger like this, and as they're wrapping the thread and doing whatever, they keep the scissors in their hands at all time while controlling another tool. I have tried a billion different scissors, and I can't do it. I just keep it down. I pick it up when I need it. If it slows me down, it slows me down, but it is what it is. So, first thing, good pair of scissors. Second thing, shitty pair of scissors. The next major tool that you're going to use is what's called a bobbin. This is another big thing. Since I have a fly in work right now, I'm just going to pull it right over here. That's a bobbin. As you can see, the thread's coming out of it. It is meant to feed thread and control it. And there's many different types of bobbins. There's like this one in particular. This is called a right bobbin. It's a little weird. It doesn't have an arm on this side, and what it does have is that gear. And what I do is I'll to get the thread off of there, I'll unscrew it. Thread spool comes off. You put on another one. You dial it back in, and then what it does is every click will add a half an ounce of resistance to the thread when I pull on it. So if you ever fished before, whether it's fly fishing or not, kind of think of it as like your drag setting on your rod. It's resistance to what's pulling out of it. So the more resistance you crank into it, the harder it is for you to spool it away from the hook. And a lot of people, when they first start, they put a shit ton of tension on the thing because they don't have control yet. So that they tend to overdo it with the tension set on there. And what happens is you end up breaking your thread. So the other aspect of it is that they are trying not to break the thread in other ways. So I can't blame them. It's a beginner kind of thing that they tend to do. The advantage to not making it so tight, to dial back a little bit, use your hand as the brake system when you're squeezing the bobbin. So when I keep it in my hand and I'm putting my hand around it and I kind of rest it into a pocket, as I'm wrapping the thread around the materials, I'm also using a squeezing pressure. Hey, Keisha. I'm using a squeezing pressure that allows me to put on the brake system myself. It's more of like a manual instead of an automatic approach to using your bobbin. So try to get used to doing that. And you're going to fuck up a whole lot. You're going to break a shit ton of thread. You're going to get pissed off. It happens. But the best thing that you could do is ease up a little bit on the tension if you find yourself breaking it a lot, because that's usually one of the big things. So that's a right bobbin. It's a little bit more technologically advanced for bobbins. And then you have your basic bobbin. So this guy does not have anything that you dial in. You're not changing tension by turning dials. You're hooking the thread spool into the bobbin, and then you're getting the thread out through that tube manually. There's two ways of doing it. You can suck the thread out of the tip of the bobbin yourself by feeding it right here. You're gonna feed it right into that as far as you can, and then you, like you're sucking, I don't know, dick or soda, through a straw. So that's how you would do it. Or you could use a threader, and that's just a super, super thin piece of wire that's attached to a handle. And you put it through there and you feed the thread and then you yank it out. So that's one way of doing it. So you're going to go through a bunch of bobbins. Whatever you tend to gravitate towards is totally going to be your preference at the end of the day, because everybody has their own... Yeah, that's my beer cracking. Everyone has their own preference when it comes to tools like that. Some people like it manual. Some people, they don't really care for the fancy schmancy stuff. I mean, the guys that have been in the industry forever, I still see them tie on really basic bobbins. I guess that's because that's what they learned on. And then after that, you're going to get what's called a whip finisher, which is this thing that's used to finish the flies. There's a bunch of different kinds, but this is a pretty standard one that everybody uses. I have a small one and I have a larger one for larger work. Hackle pliers, that grabs materials. See? And another big thing that I tend to suggest you have in the beginning is, I tend to really, really like, I have to have my UV light. That's really important. That cures resins in about 10 seconds. So instead of you using super glue or head cement, which also has its place, I use a shit ton of UV resin, and this cures it. It's faster. It also just gives a completely different look. Head cement, absolutely, it has its place. It saturates thread and things like that. So it is not a replacement of. It's just something that I use a lot. A UV torch. This one's made by Loon. It's called a Loon Infinity Light. It's about $60-something. Pretty expensive for a flashlight. I get it, but the power on this thing is insane. Super strong light. And the stronger the UV light is on the resin, the faster it cures. So if you have a weak UV torch, it's going to take you longer to cure the resins. I don't have time for that shit, so I go for the strongest I can get to get things moving along. So those are the basics of really what I would make sure that I'm set up with. The other thing, vices, I'll get into another time. So for all you fly tires that are out there that are curious as to how to get started with control, is knowing your thread. So there's a lot of companies that are out there that produce thread. There's a handful of thread companies that are preferable. They all have different things for different reasons. Some threads have a wax coating on them. Some threads don't. Some people like to wax them themselves. It's really popular in England. And then there's a stronger thread that's out now that's gel spun silk or gel spun polyurethane. They call it GSP thread. Super tough and strong. Very small diameter. That thread is strong shit, which is that. Now, the advantage of getting white thread is if you want to be a cheap ass and make it go a long way, you don't have to get every color under the sun for this thread. This thread's expensive. It's like $7-something a spool. It's fucking ridiculous. Usually a spool of thread's like $2.50 or something. This is expensive stuff. The good thing about getting it in white is that it takes really well to marker. So you could use marker to color the thread as you're tying it to whatever the hell color you want it to be. And you don't have to spend a shit ton of money on GSP thread. The white will take to anything, really. And if you really need it for cinching down materials with a lot of pressure, the GSP comes in handy. So I got it just in white. That's all I really need it for. I do have an ass ton of thread in general. I think of it as like my palette. I used to, when I was in art school, I was an oil painter, and as an artist, they always, you always wanted, every selection of color you could possibly have, or you didn't want to be limited to the colors that you can produce. So the colors that I have thread-wise, I don't want to be limited in any way. So I do have pretty much every color under the sun that I would need to match whatever fly that I'm tying. Not that everyone's like that. That's me. Actually, a lot of fly tires are like that. They have a stupid amount of materials all the time. So this is Uni thread. It's awesome thread. It's really good. I also really like the brand Danville. Danville's really good stuff. I use Danville a lot. That's a waxed. It's Flymaster waxed. I also find that it's pretty strong too. It holds up a lot. So does Uni. And people also tend to use UTC. UTC is a really good brand of thread that is used a lot in Europe. Kind of a bitch to get your hands on over here. So I don't really have a lot of UTC when it comes to thread. I have a lot of it when it comes to wire. The UTC wire is very popular over here. Thread-wise, I can't really find it as easily as you would think. It's big in England. But very, very good. So when it comes to thread, they have ways of gauging it by either aught, or by, now a lot more popular is denier. And I'm going to explain what the difference is between all those. Hey, Lori. Hope you're all right down there, cuz. So when it comes to thread diameter, beginners are not really sure what the hell they're getting. Well, I didn't know what the hell I was getting. So when I went into a fly shop and I'm trying to find, what thread to start off with, there's a billion different kinds of thread by a billion different manufacturers, and you don't really know what the hell to get. What I learned after going through that process is a really good starting point for your thread denier. Again, it's the diameter, how thick it is about 70. 70 denier, 6 or 8 aught. That's going to be 8/0 or 6/0. That's aught, and then that usually is the equivalent to 70 denier, 72 denier, something like that. So I find that for most flies that I tie, the thread denier tends to be roughly around 70 or so. Now, if it's a really big fly, if it's a big streamer fly, we're talking, big suckers, 2-3 inch flies. If you're tying a fly that big, you can go double that. 140 denier is pretty standard. That's some strong shit. And I will use that on very large flies. But if you're tying flies from like size, 8, 10, all the way up until maybe a 20, 22, 6, 8 aught, 70 denier is totally appropriate. Now, when you get into smaller flies, like really small flies, now again, with the flies, when I talk the number, the smaller the number is, the tinier the fly is. The larger the so if I say it's a size 24, that's a very, very small fly, incredibly tiny. So 24 is tiny, and then something like a 6, that's big. That's like something you'd use for saltwater or something. So if you're tying super small flies, the thing that you have to keep in mind with the thread is that you need a smaller diameter at some point, because you're going to end up building bulk. And if you're trying to cinch down a material with the thread and it's a hook that tiny, couple wraps and you're going to have a lump of shit on the hook that you really didn't want, because it's building up more than you need it to. So in that case is when you drop down to a smaller denier, maybe 50, 12 aught, something like that. And that's where I would go to if I was tying really, really tiny flies. So bulk buildup on tiny flies is something to be careful on. Keep in mind that because you're using thinner thread and you're tying smaller flies, it is easier to break the thread. No matter what brand it is, really. They all snap. So one of the things that I'm going to get into, which brings me to my original point of the video, which is thread control, is knowing your thread's breaking strength. So your thread's breaking strength, it's pretty much how much pressure, how much poundage, how much tension you could put on the thread as you pull it before the thing snaps. There's no way in hell anybody can teach you that. You can't really be taught that. That comes with experience. It comes with time. The more you do it, the more you get comfortable with the thread, the more you realize that the certain threads will do different things and certain ways will snap it more than others. If you flatten the thread, it's going to snap a little bit easier. If you rope it up, if you spin the bobbin a different way, it'll cord it. And that will make it a little bit stronger. But the denier is the denier. It'll snap at some point if you're not mindful of it. So you have to learn breaking strength of your thread that you're using as a basic of your thread control. There's a lot of guys online that I see that are not really sure why they're breaking their threads. They don't really know what's happening. Then again, some guys, they say, well, it's my second fly in and I keep snapping, my thread. Probably inexperience is my number one thing. If you find yourself snapping thread in the beginning, it's pretty typical. You're new to it. You're not really familiar with any of it. You haven't built any muscle memory with it. You're going to hold on to that. You're going to hold on to that bobbin for dear life. So, or sometimes guys really like to overrun the thread, so they'll pull this thing way out, and take these really massive revolutions around their fly, really big wraps, and they end up losing control because they're so far away from the hook that they're kind of getting away. The further you are away from the hook, the less control that you have. So I would be very mindful of that. But yes, you are going to snap thread in the very beginning. It's a given. So learn your breaking strength for your thread. Get used to it. Get a feel for it. If you find yourself snapping thread still, another thing that you can do is examine your tool. So the bobbin is at the tip of it. You're going to see it, see the little hole. This is made with a stainless steel barrel. And the stainless steel, a lot of guys like the ceramic tube inserts. The ceramic tube on the inserts that go through this entire barrel is made of a very, very smooth ceramic, and it feels nice. Don't get me wrong, I have one. If there's any sort of micro damage to the inside of that barrel, or at the tip of that barrel, if the thread catches on that damage, whether it be just the smallest cut, anything that's wrong with the tip of that, it will continuously cut your thread over and over and over again. So you find yourself breaking thread, first thing I would check is, how long have I been doing this? And if the answer is not long, then it's probably you. If that all checks out, then I would examine the tool, make sure that there's no damage at the tip or the inside of the barrel of the bobbin. So another trick that you could use is a Q-tip. Take the brand new Q-tip, stick it at the tip of the barrel, and spin it. And if you see fibers get caught, then you know that there's something wrong there, because it shouldn't get caught on anything if it was smooth. So I would definitely do that. And then the other thing that I would check when it comes to breaking your thread, check your tension. So again, how hard are you squeezing on the bobbin as you're wrapping the thread around the materials, and make sure that you're not squeezing too tight. A lot of guys, they're so concentrated on the fly that they're not really also mindful of the tension in their hands when they're squeezing the thing, and that will also snap it pretty easily, which I talked about earlier. The other thing that I would check on is, what's up, Mike? Long time no see. Good to see you, buddy. And I would definitely check and make sure that there's no damage. The other thing that I would check is your thread denier. Like I was saying, the diameter sometimes is not appropriate to what you're using. So, if you're learning to tie flies for the first time, and you bought 12-14 thread, 14 or 50 denier thread, it's really delicate stuff. You're going to snap the shit out of that stuff a lot because you don't really have the ability to control something that delicate. So if you do find yourself having a hard time with the thread in the beginning, don't feel like you can't go heavier on the denier. If you want thicker thread, go for the thicker thread. Nuno's on. What's up there, duder? You could go for a thicker thread if you find that you're breaking it. It's not a big deal. Don't feel like you're, kind of throwing in the towel because you're using like training wheels or whatever. If you need to use a heavier thread until you get a feel for it, go for it. You could, use like a 6/0 or something like that. Go heavier. So that's when you know that you need to check a few things if you're breaking thread all the time in the very beginning, because it's a bitch, and it comes with time. So when it comes to colors of thread, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. you're going to want some basic colors that you use a lot. Now, all the other in-betweens are kind of personal choice. You build up after a lot of years, but there are some colors that I really find is absolutely necessary. The first thing would be white. Like I said before, with the GSP thread, it takes well to marker. Most companies take well to marker. You could color it whatever color you want. If you're tying like a traditional Atlantic salmon flies, white is super popular because it doesn't dull the shine of silk. So when you do silk thread wraps and stuff like that, the white allows the color to pop and be more vibrant. If you use something like black thread, it behind it, because it has a translucence, the black is going to dull the color. So white is super important. Black thread is super important. Black is kind of like your go-to. If you didn't have any, I would have to say that, hey Teresa, if I didn't have any thread at all except for one color, it'd probably be black or white. White because you could color whatever you want, and black because black kind of fits most things. It kind of disappears in there with most of them. So I would do white, I do black, I would have some sort of brown. I really find that this rusty brown color, this comes in handy a lot. I use this on a lot of flies. I mean, if you examine, purple's good too, Lori. Purple's really awesome. I use that for a lot of shit too. It really revs those trout's plumes. But the rust color brown is really, really good to have. And then I also like to use like a dead brown. It's kind of like a duller. I'd get into the whole artsy talk about color, but I kind of like to keep it simple. But for a short moment, I'll get into it. I like to keep a warm and a cool. So I have a warm brown and a cool brown. Cool, I mean temperature-wise, so when you look at it, when I say it's dull or dead, that's cool. And when I say it's warm, it's something like the rust. It has more orange in it. So when I say warm and cool, that's what I mean by it. It's like a temperature. Nuno is mentioning my next one on my list as I'm moving through my threads is a thread color called Wood Duck. Wood Duck is by UTC. Remember that shit that I said was really hard to find unless you're in England or Europe? This kind of shit. I got my hands on it, but awesome color for a lot of stuff. Not easy to find, but this stuff is slick as shit. It's got a really nice feel. It's flat, which I like because I flatten a lot of my thread. I find that I flatten my thread more than I cord it. So to me, I would prefer if it was flatter and let me cord it than for me to get it corded and me flatten it every 2 seconds. But yeah. So Wood Duck, Wood Duck's a big one. I also have some sort of light yellow. Those are for like light catheels, some sulfurs. Mayflies tend to fluctuate in colors in that respect. You kind of want at least something in the lighter end of the spectrum. So, like a pale yellow, I'll use for light catheels, sulfurs. Light catheels are almost like a whitish sometimes, and then sometimes they kind of err on the yellowy. I like to do that like pale yellow, just something on the higher end of that spectrum. Moving downward, anyone that knows fishing, whether it was fly fishing or if it was regular, you've heard the word chartreuse before. Chartreuse is a very vibrant green. It is... Well, that looks yellow in the light, but... Lori, you have somebody in London? Word. I might need it. So chartreuse is a super popular color, and there's a reason why it's really popular. Trout are suckers for chartreuse. They just fucking love chartreuse. I don't know what the hell it is about that color. It drives them wild a lot of times, not every time, but they fucking love that green. It really does. It really burns their fire. So chartreuse, whether it's fly fishing or it's regular fishing, that color is fucking vital to fishing, no matter what it is. You got fucking chartreuse on everything. Teresa, you fish? You know about chartreuse. So other than that, I again, remember I said that there's a warm and a cool for everything that I really like to have. Everything in between is a personal choice. I do love to have a warm and a cool. So chartreuse is kind of the warmer green. It's higher up in value or light. It's lighter. And then you're going to go into... you want like a really middle ground green. Another color that kind of rolls off of every fly fisherman's mouth is olive. Olive. Made by Unithread. This green, or some sort of an equivalent, this is a light olive, gives me options one way or another. That's kind of that middle ground when you need something to blend into anything that you're tying that has green in it. I like to keep a middle ground green on there. So I have a bright chartreuse green for that lighter stuff. I have a middle ground green or olive for the other stuff that's darker. And then little in-betweens you'll find olive dun. That tends to be a little bit deader and gray mixed into it. There's so many variations of fucking green. So moving on from that row of the palette, is you got to have at least a spool of red thread. Red thread is really good for collars. Red is also another color that really revs their engine. They really like that stuff around the collar where the bead head sits. You'll see it a lot there. That or like a really hot orange. Something like that. I mean, that thing's like fire. So red is really important. It's also used in a lot of traditional patterns. You'll see that classic red a lot. Purple. what my cousin mentioned. Purple. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. It's necessary as shit for me. I love this fucking color. I love it for a lot of reasons. Even my Vice is purple. The purple thread, what the trout see under the water, they don't really perceive it to be actually purple most of the time. It kind of deadens and darkens out. I think with anything, it kind of almost, to them, they interpret it as like a type of gray, according to the science. I'm not a trout. I don't have trout eyes, but as far as I have read, that is possibly what they interpret that color to be. Because again, you got to remember that the water clarity is like a screen that goes over the colors. And we're not always looking through a clear pane of glass. That water is colored. Different days will color it different things. So some days it'll be super clear and they might see it with more clarity, and then there's other days where the water lacks clarity, and it's going to appear different to the trout than what you think they're seeing. Just because you see it this way does not mean it's the way they see it. So purple, from what I know, actually is not as vibrant to them unless it's like a UV or something like that, which is also debatable. But purple fucking works. It works for dry flies. It also works for nymphs, and it works for a lot of other things, but dry flies are what floats on top of the water. So when I talk about dry flies, that's the stuff that floats on top. It doesn't go under. The stuff that goes under is called nymphs. So you have dry flies, you have nymphs, and then you have the big flies. Those are called streamers. They don't really imitate any fly or insect. They imitate bait fish. So purple is used in a dry fly called the purple haze. That fly annihilates on the water for a lot of people. So do I find it important? Absolutely. I think that purple's really one of those colors that you kind of want to have. Purple under Flashaboo is also word. That's some sexy shit. So purple's really good, and then there's hopefully I didn't miss much, but I have What's really good to have is also a dun color, D-U-N. Dun is it's a type of gray. This is a warmer gray, and this is a cooler gray. So you see what I mean? This is warmer, and this is cooler. So that has a lot more life to it, and this one's kind of. So when I say warm and cool, warm, cool. All right. You don't need both, but you should have a gray thread. It's also another color that's found a lot in real life on bugs. So a warm and a cool gray. I have, and then so the next row of threads that I keep with me is not essential, but for me it makes a hell of a difference. It's called Glow Bright thread. It's UV sensitive. So for instance, when I take this thread and I take the UV light and I blast it, let's see if it'll actually show. I mean, that really, I mean, it'll actually blind you if you stare at it too hard. That stuff is strong shit. So UV thread is used for a lot of hot spot colors. A lot of guys will put hot spot colors behind the bead as a collar or some sort of trigger for them. Trout tend to gravitate towards triggering mechanisms. Some color that drives them wild, that entices them to bite. It is theorized that the UV thread, when the UV light is coming through the water and no other light is, it'll actually show through and light up the thread like a fucking Christmas tree. It's debatable how hot these threads really do get to the trout when it's, 6-8 feet deep. I don't know. I know that they work. So whether it's as bright as we perceive it, it's kind of debatable. Trout have an unbelievable set of eyes. They see a lot more than you think they do. They're equivalent to like a fucking eagle, if I remember correctly. So I don't know what they see, but I know that the Glow Bright threads definitely have their place on any fly tires thread palette. I really have. I like to keep it all the way from white, yellow, orange, hot orange, pink, a deeper pink, a chartreuse, a caddis green, a blue, and a violet. I go all the way down the spectrum. Like I said before, I went to art school, so I like to keep my palette open, and I like to have my color choices readily available. I don't like to feel limited in any way. So when I want a color or some idea pops in my head, that's exactly what I'm going to go for. If I feel like I can't find it, that sucks. So I have that out of old habits. And then after that is really wire and stuff like that. I'm not really going to get into the wire too much. It kind of applies the same way. Different colors, different diameters, different everything. I'll save that for another time. I'm not going to get into the wire stuff. Do you guys have, anyone that's watching, do you guys have any questions about fly fishing or fly tying in general that you always wondered what the scoop is, but you don't really know what the hell he does or what I do? Is there anything that's kind of a mystery to you when it comes to the sport? I'll leave it open for a moment to see if anyone has any questions about fly fishing or fly tying. Nuno, you could ask. I know that you need a lot of tips. How long does it take to make one? That's a pretty popular question I get. How long it takes to make one is really dependent on the complexity of the pattern. That's kind of like how long it takes to paint a painting. It depends. It depends on your approach. It depends on how complex the recipe is for it and everything. If it's a typical run-of-the-mill nymph, remember, dry flies float on top, nymphs go under. If it's a typical nymph, I can usually tie those in about 8 minutes or so. I try to move faster. If it's something more elaborate, like a big streamer, something big, something fancy, like, shit like that, that's going to take a lot longer. That could take if you want to take your time on it, maybe a few hours. But traditional salmon flies and stuff like that, you take your time on those because they're not meant to be fished. They're meant to be done as an art form. So I could work on it for days if I wanted to, because it's not getting thrown in the water and getting torn up by a trout's mouth or a salmon's mouth. So it really depends. How long it takes to tie a fly really depends on the complexity of the pattern and also the ability of the fly tyer. There's guys that have been tying for fucking 30 years and can crank these suckers out like there's no tomorrow, and it appears as if the pattern doesn't even matter. It's unbelievable. So I'm still learning how fast I can tie flies, but I feel like I'm getting faster. So Mike, I actually never got into fly fishing, mainly been saltwater, only pretty interested one day, maybe get into the art of it. Mike, I'm telling you, don't be intimidated by it. It's not as complicated as it seems to be. It's not magic, really. If you could also fly fish saltwater. A lot of people don't know that. There's fly fishing saltwater is a thing. Very much so. So, if you preferred to be a saltwater fisherman, there's a place there for you, buddy. And if you have any other questions about that stuff, I'd be more than happy to help you out, brother. I've known you since I was 4 years old. I got you. Joni, how do you tie the thread when you are finished wrapping your fly? How do I finish it? So how I finish a fly is done with what's called a whip finisher. It's a really funky looking tool. It's fucking weird looking, right? And it looks a lot more complicated than it really is. It's not. So you see that arm that's up there? Let's flip it around like a hook, right? So pretend that's like your elbow, and then that's your hand up top, and you hook onto the thread, right? So you're gonna take that, you're gonna put that on top of your thread, and what's gonna happen is when you're finishing your fly, you're gonna take the thread when this arm is resting on it. You're gonna take the thread and you're gonna pull it around this. Pretend it's like a tree stump, and you're gonna take the thread and you're gonna wrap it around the stump, and you're gonna bring it across here. So now what you have is crosshairs, like in a sight. And what you do once you have the crosshairs is exactly like you would have on a sight if you were hunting. You would zero that crosshair to exactly target where you want to do those wraps. And then you're going to take it and you're going to start to, just like the thread, you're going to start to rotate this as you're holding the bobbin over here. So you're going to have thread that's going laterally, and you're going to have thread that's moving vertically. And as you wrap this, it's going to cause a knot. And when you're done, you're going to unhinge it and pull it down, and this gets close to the fly, and then you unhook it and pull, and you cut the tag, and that's how you finish the fly. And I'll show that up close when I could do a video that's really on that specific technique. But a whip finisher is usually how it's done. If not, you could use a half hitch, which is a way of just wrapping your thread around a tool at the head of the fly, and you could do that a few times, and that will also knot it. Not as secure as a whip finish, so the whip finish is definitely the way it goes. Let's see. How many colors do I recommend? I would probably say 8 to 10. Will probably get you the basic. Thank you. I'd say about 8 to 10 will get you the basic lineup of thread itself, and that's not including like the glow bright and all the fancy schmancy stuff. Just basic thread with the white and the black included, probably like 10, something like that. Thank you, Lori. There'll be more. So yeah, I would probably say about 10, maybe even 12 if you really want to splurge, but you really need to have at least every end of the spectrum when you're starting off, because you're going to find patterns that just need one or the other. Yeah, Mike, you're in Florida, dude. I mean, that's some prime fishing area for like tarpon, bonefish, permit, all that shit. I mean, those fish are absolutely unbelievable, and those are fish that guys wish that they could fish for. I mean, and you're down there, so I know that trout's not really a Florida thing, but you guys have spectacular salt fishing. Tarpon, bonefish, and permit are the three big dogs that are in those waters down by the Keys and stuff. Definitely worth going for. One of these days, I hope to get out there for them. So if you're getting in there, yeah, definitely. Florida is not a foreign land to good fly fishing, that's for sure. Any other questions for you guys? Any sort of mystery about this thing that I do? Sea trout too, yeah, word. If you guys have any other questions, you could ask. Otherwise, I might be tapping out here for this video. I'm gonna be doing more. I just want to keep them segmented because there's a lot of things to go over, and I don't want to smush them all and overload the subject too much. I wanted this to just be a beginner starting point, and then I'll get into other stuff. Any other questions? No, you guys are good. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the hellos. It's really good to see some of those faces out there. All right. So I hope you guys found it interesting. We're all hunkered down in the bunker. So we have to keep entertained somehow, and I figured if there's any time to... I've been wanting to do these videos for a while. I just haven't really gotten there yet. So I thought that this was a pretty good time to start them. I was pretty nervous to do the live stuff because I'm like, what if I bomb and I fuck up and I stutter and stammer and don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, and you know what, just kind of, you do the best you can, and hopefully that was informative and interesting and not boring as shit. So thank you for watching, and I'm gonna be back soon, maybe tomorrow morning. I don't know. I have nothing else better to do. So I might see you guys tomorrow morning, and I'll move on to the next subject, and hopefully it'll be just as entertaining. And Mike, yeah, Mike, I do have a Karen, hello. Mike, I do have a YouTube channel. It's under Fisher Flyworks. If you Google it, whatever the fuck you do, you type it into the search thing. I guess you could Google it too, who knows. If you type in Fisher Flyworks, you could put the words together, you could space them apart. Haven't really made a decision as to what's the most appropriate. But that is the banner in which I fly under when it comes to YouTube and for selling my flies. So if you want to check that out on YouTube, I'm going to move this over to YouTube. I know that there's a YouTube Live too, but I don't really know all that shit. So I am going to move it over to there when I get a chance. But if you want to look, there is a video there that introduces more of my background, and my friend Nuno as well. He's on that video on the YouTube channel. And that's kind of like, that was our starting point of to what our introduction, who the hell am I, to people that don't know me personally. So if you want to check that out, Mike, it is on YouTube under Fisher Flyworks. And subscribe, because I'm definitely going to be adding shit to it, especially since I have all the time in the world. Teresa, thank you very much. It's very sweet of you. I hope you're doing well too. I miss you. Karen, love you. You know that. Lori, tell Joe that they wiped out most of the beers up here, and that's where we're at. They took my Paps, so Coors Banquet is where we're going. And if I do YouTube videos, I'll kind of do it back to this too. I don't know what the platform is going to be for all of it. Whatever is user friendly, and this is pretty user friendly. YouTube, there's a little bit of a learning curve with stuff, so most likely I'm gonna record it on this, and then I'm gonna move it over and sort it out on YouTube and post it there. But this is, to me, this is just a one-click deal. I'm on, I record, that's it, and it's over. So I'm probably gonna be doing more of the Facebook stuff. And I also, there's a lot of people I'm in touch with Facebook. YouTube, I don't really see who the hell's there, and I don't know what Joe Schmo is watching it. So this is good for people that know me too, and never really got a chance to ask questions about what I do. I'm sure you guys see a lot of photos of my flies, and you know that I fly fish, but you have no idea what the hell I'm really doing. So this is in some way for you to see the inside job here. And on the upcoming videos, I will be showing you I'm going to show you here for a second, but my workstation, there's my vise, and all that fun stuff. And I'll show you guys my workstation, and I'll probably be able to get the camera set in a position where you're able to see the flies being tied, so it's not like completely out of focus and stuff. I gotta figure that out. Like I said, I'm learning as I'm going. So thank you very much, guys. Tell Joe to enjoy his bud, though. Thank you. Thanks for joining, and I hope to see you guys soon. And I really hope that everybody is doing all right with everything that's going on. Stay calm. Yeah, decorating trees for Christmas. Yeah, that. I don't get it, but whatever makes you happy, man. So, I hope that everyone's doing well. We're gonna get through this. It will pass. All things do. So it will be okay. Just to remember, there's been worse pandemics in our history, and we've gotten through those. We will get through this. It will end. It's going to be a while. So nothing to panic about. Nothing to really lose our heads about. Keep yourself busy. Find new hobbies. Read books. Do the things that you never get a chance to do. Catch up with old friends. All that stuff is really, really healthy. And really, above all, is take care of yourself and take care of everybody else, and really keep a leveled head about all this stuff. Everything is okay. It will pass. It won't pass easily. But don't let them frighten you with too much buzzwords and stuff like that. It's something to be taken very seriously, but at the same time, it's not anything that we need to lose our minds about. It will pass. It's just going to take time, and we need to listen when we're told to listen. So, all right. So, thanks a lot, and hope to see you guys soon. Take care.